Yeah, for sure. The film itself is very different, but the experience was just as lovely and as involved and as satisfying. So it was great. I think, yeah, but that's what you want. What you want is there not to be one thing that you're doing, because then you just start doing that one thing. There was always stuff to explore about what was happening, about who these people were, about how they worked with each other. You've got these other amazing actors like Ruth and Charlotte and Will. So it felt really alive because there wasn't just one aim. And I think then in terms of getting people to see the film, really, I think the way we're trying to get people to walk into it is as a drama primarily, because it's really about the people in the house and how they're falling apart and how they're trying to uphold themselves. And then the gradual breakdown has something to do perhaps with the supernatural, but it's more important how they interact.
I think if you go into it like that, then all of these other elements, that's how I read the book. I didn't know anything about the book when I read it. And for quite a long time, it's just, you're just entering the world of these characters, and it's really compelling. And then when odd stuff started to happen, it becomes, you're already right in there, and that has a tremendous meaning. I think if you're going in thinking, okay, here comes a horror film, you'll be wondering when the big scare is going to happen. That's you're absolutely right. I mean, Faraday's such a complicated character, and much of his complication stems back to these very strong feelings he had as a child of wanting to be part of a world that he knew he would never be accepted in. Yeah,
and I mean that conversation is obviously really, it's always relevant, but at the moment it's particularly so because it's also to do with the notion of being the man in the relationship and kind of the control that people are brought up to expect kind of with being male almost, and then trying to bring that to bear on other people around you, how even if you don't want to do that, it can end up being a very destructive force, and that inside of the class system as well is even more potent.
Yes, that's right, that's a good spot because in the book, it's very, you can just have Faraday meet somebody who tells him something, and that's just as direct a version once he tells you what he learned as him being there, because it's all mediated by his voice. Here, so a lot of the work in the adaptation, Lucinda Coxon did a brilliant job of finding a way of having Faraday's presence be sort of work for us in terms of what we needed to know, and also there are a couple of points in the film where we allow ourselves to be away from him, and they work, and nobody goes, "Oh God, that's a jolt," and which is actually not something you take for granted, because in the constructing of the film, making that work was a really tough, because you're with him so long before that happens for the first time.
Yeah, but I think what Faraday is battling with in the story, like what that character is battling with, is very similar to what you would battle with if you walked into a room being told it was haunted and all of a sudden things start going bump in the night sort of thing, Right. I think that he's dealing with that too. He's a scientific man, and yet these things are happening which he can't explain with his science, and that's very, very troubling to him.
That's a good question. It's always, I was talking to a friend of mine here who's British and has been living here for 10 years, and she was talking about all the things she had to get used to in Ireland that she had never expected. The biggest one of all being, the intake of breath on an agreement, right?
Brilliant. Yeah.
And but the thing is, if you live next to a big country and you're in a small country, and especially living in Dublin and watching British TV as a child, actually feel, and having spent quite a bit of time, as you have, Domhnall, as well, you feel very much that that's a culture that I feel very fluent in, but I also think that being a bit outside it is useful, because you when you do come to learn about the British class system, which still has power. I mean, look at who's in charge in Britain at the moment. Still, we're not post-class really.
No.
We're absolutely not. I think being from outside allows you that kind of distance and that amazement at how powerful it was certainly then. That's a very funny kind of irony, is that it's more claustrophobic really, Hundreds Hall, than the room was. But yeah, quite nice to work in large spaces where you can get a lot of crew in without everybody actually, sort of. I spent a lot of time in room under people's armpits is what I seem to remember. So it's quite nice on a hot set not to do that.
Yeah. I don't think I ever truly rocked the mustache, but I certainly had it on my face for a good 3.5 months, I think, right?
Yeah. Whoa.
Yeah, we arrived in hoping that we wouldn't need a mustache, and then as it went down, it was funny actually, because I think he's basically trying to be a bit older, have a little bit more gravitas than he has. He's trying, a lot of him is projected is about how he wants to appear because he wants to be taken seriously, and I think that was kind of part of what we thought may have been his armor against the world. Little Stranger 2. Coming to cinemas
this
soon.
time it's personal.
Yeah.